Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining another one of Wellspring's Be Well Talks. Today's webinar is on the science of flourishing and well-being, building your resilience toolkit. So I'm very happy to introduce our speaker for today, Marla Warner. And so Marla is a speaker, consultant, and coach with over 25 years of experience creating and delivering transformative workshops and programs. Marla's credentials include certification through the International Coaching Federation, along with specialized training as a business and leadership coach, certified positive psychology coach, and certified health coach. Marla holds a BSc in kinesiology and brings extensive experience in applied mindfulness practices. Marla is also a registered yoga instructor, and she has also been a Wellspring program leader since 2010. So Marla is no stranger to Wellspring. So, Marla, thank you again so much for being here today, and I'm happy to pass over the mic to you.
Thank you so much. And it's really my pleasure to be here. We will dive right in with our session today and give you a little bit on where we're going. So, really answering this question, is it possible to flourish in challenging times? I'll provide a brief background on the science of flourishing and well being. I will introduce the PERMA-V model, which we'll be taking a look at all the way through and exploring the applications and integration of that model, and then putting it all together. How can we move toward flourishing? So that's a lot in 40 minutes or so. So let's start with really the part of the title of this session and understanding just what is well-being. So this is a definition, as you can see from the Harvard Human Flourishing Program, a state in which all aspects of a person's life are good. And in its most basic form, it is the ability to feel good and function effectively. And with high levels of well-being, we're able to cope with challenging events in our lives. We can enhance the positive experiences, and we more flexibly move through the range of human emotions, which are all part of the human experience and all normal parts of our experience. And it is really a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not just the absence of disease or infirmity as well. And that also comes from the World Health Organization, that add-on. So I want to introduce you to what is positive psychology, because much of the science of flourishing and well-being comes from the area of positive psychology. And we're all familiar with psychology in general, but in the late 80s, somebody by the name of Martin Seligman, who was the head of the American Psychological Association at the time, he was really asking the question, well, we understand a lot about where our problems are and the diseases that we need to fix, and how we work best with the things that aren't working so well for ourselves mentally and emotionally. But what do we know about how do people flourish? How do people actually go north of neutral, so to speak, and to thrive and to experience more positive emotions and overall increased well-being? And that was really the beginning of what is known as positive psychology. Really sort of high level overview of it is going north of neutral. We don't want to just be kind of at a basic level, but how can we, in all areas of our lives, given whatever is going on around us, even just being sick doesn't necessarily mean that you're not healthy in other ways. So how can we actually move ourselves to this point of north of neutral? And the other word that is in the title is the word flourishing. And the idea of flourishing, again, versus depressed on the other end of the spectrum, is that it's not so much that we're going to necessarily be right over on the right hand side versus the left, being depressed. Most of us function somewhere in the middle of that spectrum, and we move around all the time given different experiences and challenges and positive experiences in our lives. But we do know that this word languishing is something that became sort of a popular term during COVID. It was considered the most common experience that people were experiencing. And it's really just described as a very blah feeling, a state where we just don't have much energy, kind of a stagnated state, a sense of feeling empty. And we know if that's where how we're feeling and that isn't addressed or supported, that we can move more towards the state of depression. And so we want to be able to notice that should we feel that we are languishing, this sort of blah feeling. It's almost like looking through a foggy windshield wiper, just not really being able to focus or pay attention. We want to notice that because even moving ourselves a very slight amount towards the right is helpful and supportive of our overall well-being and resilience. So it's important to note that with some support with these tools and strategies that we'll be looking at, we can begin to shift ourselves a little bit more to the right so that we have an opportunity to flourish, perhaps even thrive despite challenging situations that we can be facing. And so the model that Martin Seligman developed is known as the PERMA model. And along with one of his students, who was also one of my teachers way back when, she added the V, which is vitality. So this model is referred to as the PERMA-V model of well-being and flourishing. And I'm going to take a look at each one of these in a little bit of detail, often referred to as the pillars of well-being or the pillars of the science of positive psychology. And before we do that, just a quick note on what this word resilience means, also part of the title of this session. And this is a definition of resilience, the flexibility in response to changing situational demands, the ability to bounce back. We often think of resilience that way from a negative or difficult situation. And resilience is those things, but having been in the world of working in resilience now for more than a few decades, there's a couple of things that I like to add to that. And it is also the ability to bounce back with as little physical or emotional wear and tear as possible. And what I mean by that is that challenging situations come into our lives. We will absolutely be impacted by them. But to the degree that we can bounce back with a little less bruising or strain or sort of wear and tear, um, allows us a greater degree of resilience. And how that happens is by what we do almost day in, day out. So resilience is not something we can just wake up with one day and say, today's the day I'm going to be a more resilient person. It really is about being prepared, about growing and gaining tools, and it is developed over time when planned into daily actions. It is really much like lifting a weight on a regular basis. We are constantly, continually developing our resilience so that when the challenges do come our way, which we all know they will in some way at some point, we have that ability to take some bruising and some scuffing, but we will bounce back with a little less physical or emotional wear and tear because of the foundation that we have developed over time. And we know that there are many paths towards building our resilience, and that is what the PERMA-V model outlines for us. And we can really pick up any one of them along the way. Certainly, they are all useful, but we really can work towards supporting our resilience in any number of ways. And so that's the basic background that I am providing, and we'll move on to the pillars, to our PERMA-V model and taking a look at that. And so the first one, the P, is for positivity. And sometimes people think, oh, just be positive and I'm supposed to be thinking positive thoughts. That's not what this is. So not rainbows and unicorns at all. There is actually a lot of science about why positive emotions are useful. And again, out of the world of positive psychology, the researchers wondered, we understood the usefulness, the evolutionary use of negative emotions, a sense of danger or fear or threat. Those were actually useful for survival. We needed to experience those things so we knew where to run, what was necessary. But they were asking, what is the evolutionary basis of positive emotions? And it turns out that there are many. One is that they counter what's known as our negativity bias. And I'm going to come back to that and say a little bit more about that in a few minutes. But basically, it is about the fact that as humans, we're a little more wired to the negative, to the bad, than to the good. I'll say more. When we experience positive emotions, it actually allows us to see more possibilities and we become more resilient because we are more open to possibilities and trying things differently. It does promote greater psychological and physical overall well being. If it's useful at all, we get to be better negotiators when we experience positive emotions. And that has to do with being able to hear other people, gain more information, gather resources, and use that intelligently and effectively. And when we're in positive, experiencing a positive emotion, that is the basis for learning and growth. We can't learn and we don't develop and grow when we're in a stressed state. It's as though our executive functions and our learning ability is offline. We learn and we grow when we are experiencing more positive emotions. So, how can we build in positive emotions on a more regular basis? So, first, it's be intentional. Add to your reservoir of positive emotions. One way you can do that, you can go online and go on to a website that says feelingswheel.com. There are many, and you'll see a range of emotions. For anyone who's been in Healing Journey 1, we take a look at this emotions, this feelings wheel. And the idea is that we want to get to have more of a vocabulary around our emotions. We all know sad and happy and grief and fear, that those sort of our basic emotions that we often state. But there's a lot of nuance around emotions, and the more that we can become a little more fluid and have a greater vocabulary around our emotions, the more positive emotion we tend to experience. So, intentionally acting to create experiences that generate more positive emotions. Taking a walk, looking at, depending where people are now, the beautiful fall colors that are just emerging and noticing them. Having a conversation that for you is fulfilling and satisfying. So, being appreciative, being curious, open, caring, compassionate, and bringing awareness to the moments that you're experiencing these positive emotions and amplifying them. So don't just let them pass on by, which we do quite easily, but staying with it, noticing it, a tasting something delicious and just sitting with that taste and that pleasure for just a moment. We talk about, and the science backs up, that we aren't in any way looking to be happy all the time. That's not what this is about, but it's looking for positive emotion snacks, so to speak. Just having these small and varied boosts as frequently as possible of positive emotions. And the more that we build positive emotions, we support the ability to build on them even more. So we sort of move quite literally in our brains into this more expansive, open ended way of thinking. And it changes the whole cascade of neurochemicals that are flooding through our system such that we feel better. We actually have the ability to see things differently. So you might be wondering, what is a positive emotion? Maybe it's really been such a challenging time that there's actually difficulty in experiencing one. So I thought I'd put out a few here just to remind people of what a positive emotion might look like. And there are, of course, so many more than that. All of them allow us to really broaden our sense of both emotional feelings as well as shifts how we're thinking. And if there's anything else that you might add to this list, think about that. What is a positive emotion that you appreciate that you would like to add? And I'm going to come back and say a little bit more about those emotions that are in blue. They're a bit of kind of our superpowers of positive emotions, and I'll come back to those. This is just some interesting neuroscience showing the difference of our brains, the brain on negativity. So now that we can do these functional MRI scans on people's brains, have been for some time now. There's not a lot firing, is what you're seeing here, versus the brain on positivity, and you see a whole lot more going on. And in our sort of real life sense, what's happening here is that when we are feeling stressed, when we're feeling as though we can't think about solutions, we're in a very negative state, we're having a lot of difficulty, how we think quite literally becomes more restricted and constricted. It's as though we're looking at life through a lens that is that small. As we begin to experience positive emotions, quite literally, our peripheral vision widens and we take in more information. And this is known as the broaden and build theory, because we broaden our ability to see the possibilities, the solutions, reframing, other ways of looking at things, and we build our resources as we do that along the way. And so, what I would put out to you as we finish off the positivity pillar is to think about what is one thing that you can do to bring more positive emotion into your day, one small little positive emotion snack. And as well, what is one thing that you might stop engaging in that brings you negative emotions in your day? Is there anything you can let go of? And maybe that's, watching the late night news, which doesn't do a whole lot for any of us, but something that you're aware of that you can let go of that isn't serving you or supporting you. And with that, we're going to move on to the second pillar, which is engagement. Now, I know that many people on the line will have some experience in this part of engagement. There are a number of different ways that we can build our capacity around engagement. The one that I'm focusing on here is mindfulness. And at Wellspring, there are many programs that speak to and with practices of mindfulness. So it is a particular way of paying attention on purpose, in the present moment, and in a non-judgmental manner. And that is really the definition of mindfulness. It's a little easier to say than and often harder to do, but it is the opposite of running on automatic pilot. It's being intentional. It's noticing what is going on around you in your environment and within yourself. And there are many benefits to mindfulness, and these are really just a few of them. And again, much of this is mentioned in a number of Wellspring programs. But what we will jump to right now is just the actual practice. In case anybody out there is not familiar with what I'm talking about, it's always nice to actually have an experience. So I'm going to ask you right now to just sit as you are, wherever you are. And you can either watch this meme and breathe with it, or you can turn your gaze gently downward or close your eyes and just listen to my voice guiding you through this experience, which will be no more than 3 minutes. So just noticing yourself right here and now, bringing yourself into this present moment by deliberately noticing your feet on the floor, the backs of your thighs resting down, your arms at your sides or in your lap, and adopting a posture that for you is not too slouched or too stiff, but one that provides a sense of dignity for you. And then noticing that you are breathing, that there is an in-breath followed by an out-breath, an easy and rhythmic breathing pattern. No need to change anything, just a noticing of breath in and breath out. And as other thoughts enter your awareness, acknowledging them and letting them gently pass on by as you return your focus to the next in breath. one breath after the other. Your breath can function as an anchor to bring you into the present and help you to tune into a state of awareness that's a little calmer about how things are right now. And then expand your field of awareness around you and your breathing so that it includes a sense of your whole body, your posture, your facial expression. And then slowly we'll come back. So a brief mindfulness exercise. And there are perhaps other things that we do that allow you to feel present or calm or in the moment. For some people, breathing is very useful when we talk about being able to work with engagement. It can be other things as well. It can be moving or music or art that we do. So what else might you do that allows you to feel present, calm, or in the moment? And we often talk about how can we integrate mindfulness into everyday life. It might be a more formal practice, such as something that we just did in a short period or longer period of time, but also practice during routine activities, being mindful as we put on our shoes or take our shoes off in the smallest mundane activities, being mindful as we eat and noticing our food, being mindful as we wash the dishes, being mindful as we wait or walk. So we can help, it's helpful for us to pick a prompt and notice, help ourselves to remind ourselves to be mindful in any one of those situations. So we can always bring mindfulness into our lives, not necessarily in a formal experience, but also in the informal. And then as far as this same area, and this also tags on to positive emotions, I mentioned I'm going to come back to this emotion of gratitude. And that is because not all positive emotions are created equally. Gratitude has been very well researched over many decades now, and it's not just a nice to have. You may have heard the line, it's good to have an attitude of gratitude. Yes, it is, but there's actually a lot of very solid science about the why behind that. And just as some of the benefits, first, what is gratitude? It is an authentic feeling of appreciation, of recognition, of something that either someone did for you or that you appreciate of somebody else or something else. And when we have this sense of gratitude, we become more optimistic, more able to see that we have some control over some things in our lives, that things can work out differently with concerted effort. It does boost our immune system. There's a shift in our physiology. We become more focused, more clear in our mental functions, more decisive. Fancy way of saying less me, me, me. We become more pro-social, more other focused, more connected to other people. We increase our ability for connection and belonging. And people who experience gratitude regularly tend to sleep better and have overall greater vitality and well-being. So there are many benefits to gratitude. And the exercise that I will leave you with is we've probably heard of a gratitude journal, and that's a nice thing to do. We don't have to write down daily something that we're grateful for. We can adapt to that sometimes. And so it sort of loses its punch. But every now and again, or for a couple of weeks, we can do it and then let it go. Write down 3 things that you're grateful for. And again, don't just let them go, but savor them, hang on to them, let them kind of sit there for a few minutes, noticing them. And with that, notice how that makes you feel in the moment. That's where the rewiring of the brain and the nervous system actually happens, letting it sit there. And over time, what is said is that we move from being in a state of gratitude to it being a trait of ours. We become more grateful. And this is just a little bit of much of the research that has been done over the years. And you can see some of these titles and titles of research papers that have been done and some of the benefits around that. And I mentioned with positive emotions, this idea of negativity bias. So gratitude is one of the ways that we really can balance out our negativity bias, which is the fact that we have a tendency as humans, this is an evolutionary wiring in us, to notice the bad over the good, to notice negative information over positive information. Another way of saying that is that we are far more likely to be aware of our headwinds versus our tailwinds, the things that have supported us and helped us along in our journey so far. And by paying more attention to our tailwinds, studies have shown that we can accentuate feelings of optimism and overall positive emotions. And this is necessary because otherwise we tend to sort of spiral down in our thinking or restrict our thinking, as I presented in that earlier image. And just a little bit of a lighthearted view on this. We are all wired for the negative. You know, you can see this. There are a few of us that have that balance, but see what we can do to try to find and notice the gratitude where we can. Moving on to our next pillar, which is relationships. And this is a quote that, again, comes out of the world of positive psychology and what's considered to be the longest longitudinal study that has occurred out of Harvard. It is our relationships with other people matter, and they matter more than anything else in this world. And what this study found, which was done over 80 years with men, now with women, it continues, it's ongoing, is that after looking at all elements of the people that were involved with the study, ages, socioeconomic levels, health over time, family supports, many different markers, that the degree of social connection that somebody has made the difference between their overall well-being and resilience in general. So humans are wired with a need to belong. We all want to be a part of something. We all want to have a shared experience and to be heard and felt and noticed in our lives. And we do that through our relationships. So our relationships actually provide us, again, you can see this with a range of positive emotions, of optimism, of hope, a sense of meaning. It supports our confidence out there in the world. They are, our relationships overall are protective of both our physical and mental health and absolutely support our resilience. So relationships are key for us at any time in our lives and through our journeys in life. And just a few things that we can do around our relationships, because I think we all know that when we are feeling stressed and challenged, we often pull back from our relationships. And sometimes there is a need for that and it feels like the right thing. And that is absolutely okay as well. And just knowing that over time, we want to connect again. Perhaps we pull back for a period of time, but even maintaining virtual banter can be helpful. Expressing appreciation for somebody, just naming that. Can we reach out to someone who we can support, and can we seek support? Are we seeking support? A really impactful resilience booster is knowing when to seek support and being able to do that. Plan to socialize. Don't just, let it go and think it will happen, but what are we doing to plan on a walk, on a cup of tea, on even the smallest ways that we can socialize? And put it in our calendar, schedule it, support meetings, socializing, whatever we can do that feels right for us to be able to have these kinds of supports and connections in our lives. The research has actually found that we all need, ideally, about 5 people in our lives that are our supports. And I like to think of this as sort of our little mini board of directors. So what I leave for you as the challenge here is, can you name your 5 people, your personal mini board of directors, the people that you could call at 2 in the morning, should you require that? Who is out there for you? And they're not necessarily the people who are closest to us or our immediate family. Sometimes they're very different than that. Who is out there for you? Who are your 5 people that you can name? And then on reflection, what might you do to strengthen any one of your connections? So anything at all, something to go away with and think about, what might you do to strengthen just one of your connections? And then we move on to our meaning pillar. So meaning performs many functions in our lives. It really is the bedrock, the foundation for our lives, and it is a huge resilience builder. So, meaning is not, again, about finding happiness all the time or being happy all the time. And the research is very clear that those who seek happiness all the time are far less resilient. It's actually an impediment to our well being than those who have found a sense of meaning or purpose in their lives. Meaning helps us to have a sense of direction. It absolutely contributes to greater happiness, well-being, and resilience over trying to find happiness. So it is a significant resilience boost and support. There's a researcher who names 4 pillars of meaning: belonging, purpose, storytelling, and transcendence. So, belonging, I spoke to in our relationships, the fact that as humans, we all have a need to feel connected and belong. And that is a part of meaning making, as our relationships do support meaning making for us. So, purpose. Purpose is about accomplishing goals that are most meaningful to you. It really is about a sense of being a part of and connected to something greater than yourself, that you understand who you are in the world, how you show up, what is important to you, what are your values, how do they show up in your life? So, as we learn about ourselves more and we grow, we get to understand our purpose. It's a very authentic sense and a very personal and individual sense for ourselves. Storytelling and transcendence, I'll speak to a little bit as well. So purpose, we can talk about, how do we stay rooted in our purpose when confronted with challenging and difficult situations? How do we remind ourselves what is really important for us? And how can I continue to hold those things in my space while I am going through challenging times? So reminding yourself of what's important to you, reminding yourself of your values, which can change over time, getting to know your values as they may change and transition over time, and continually thinking about what is most important to you, what is priority for you, what are your skills and your strengths that you can hang on to, that really mm, exemplify who you are through any challenges that you're experiencing. And this is some research that came out of the world of purpose, which was done at the University of Michigan Hospital. And what these researchers did was they went and they spoke to everybody in the hospital, and they were looking at a sense of meaning and purpose in all the hospital workers. And they really felt that it was the surgeons, the doctors who were going to speak to having the greatest purpose, the greatest meaning in their lives. But they actually found something quite different. And there's a very lovely YouTube that you can snap a picture here and find it, of a woman whose name is Candace Billings. She is a custodian at the hospital, and she had a sense of immense purpose in the work that she did and how she showed up every single day. And I'll read you a quote from her, which is that I work here because I love helping sick people. My job is to make them comfortable and happy, to create and maintain a clean and safe atmosphere where patients can concentrate on getting better. When you help patients recover in any way, you give them hope. And she went on to say that this is what I'm supposed to do. I don't provide medical care, but when people see my joy and my happiness, they feel better. This is my building. These are my patients. This is my family. This is the most rewarding experience of my life. So sometimes where we find purpose and how we feel purposeful can be quite different than what we might think is purposeful in our lives. And storytelling. So humans are natural storytellers. We all tell stories all the time. Sometimes they're in our heads, sometimes we're telling them to other people. And we tell ourselves stories because we learn by telling stories. We connect with other people as we tell stories. It helps us to make meaning and understand is our storytelling. And we do all of this quite naturally. But sometimes it's helpful for us to check in and to see, are we reliable narrators? Are the stories we're telling ourselves accurate? Or perhaps they are fake news themselves? Are we telling ourselves stories that are supportive, that are helpful, that are empathetic, that are compassionate? Are we being hard on ourselves and difficult to ourselves, having unrealistic expectations, or just being very self-critical or self-deprecating when it's really not helpful or necessary? And we often think that, well, depending on the life that I'm living, those are the stories that I then have to tell, that my life really dictates my stories. But in fact, we can think about that quite differently and think about the fact that our stories can shape our lives. We can think about, what do I say to myself? Do I tell myself that I should be, trying to do this and taking a course here and working on this? Or am I saying things to myself like, I'm doing the best I can right now. I'm involved with and engaged in what is helpful. I'm connecting with people who are supportive, or, I must be perfect, or this must be perfect. So what are the stories that we tell ourselves, and are they helping us, supporting us, or are they perhaps in any way adding to our stress? Noticing our storytelling can be useful. And finally, going back to positive emotions as well as meaning and purpose, we know that the positive emotions of awe and wonder are also sort of our superpowers of positive emotions, along with gratitude. There is a reason why we are sort of pulled to stand out under a starry night and to gaze up, or to look out at a fantastic view in front of us. That these emotions, when we experience awe and wonder, they have this huge shift in our physiology. And again, with that comes a cascade of positive neurochemicals that changes our physiology, our biology, so that we are in a more open and calm and receptive place. So a sense that meaning and transcendence and this idea of awe and wonder, that all of this is another way that we can really move towards a more resilient, overall stronger sense of well-being. So when do we take moments in our lives? When do we take the time to notice the awe and the wonder around us? Again, from the beautiful colors of our changing trees to anything else that for you may bring a sense of awe and wonder, and sitting with that, savoring it, noticing it, even if just for a moment or two. That absolutely can shift our entire physiology. Huge mood boosters and huge recovery shifts to our nervous system. And then we move to our pillar of number 5, which is achievement. So This, of course, it's a very large area. This is about accomplishing meaningful goals. It's about ongoing learning and growing in any way at all for us, and a sense that we're moving towards some part of ourselves that is furthering our potential. Just from a definition perspective, achievement or goal setting, any desired outcome that wouldn't otherwise happen without some kind of intervention. So it's an intentional shift for us. So, in the world of achievement and goal setting, and as a coach, absolutely, we believe that goals are important. It's nice to have goals, but in fact, just having a goal doesn't necessarily shift us or move us to success. That we know that a sense of purpose and inspiration and focus, all of this follows by having goals. And yet, goals alone aren't enough to really generate a shift, move us forward in any way. If there's something that we're actually working towards or wanting to work on. And what does help us is moving towards habits. So, habits are really the solution when we're thinking about goals. And I'm just going to provide a very high level around habits here. We are creatures of habits. Habits consume less energy than actually trying to think about what it is that I want to do next. They're kind of like the well-trodden tracks that we go over and over and over. And the first place to start when we want to try anything new is with the tiniest of steps. We often think we need to make big, large scale changes, or I have to enroll in, a whole bunch of courses now to see any change or understand what's going on. No, just one tiny, simple step. In fact, we want such a tiny step that we absolutely will have success in it. And a way to help us out with that is to use a prompt. Perhaps it's when I wake up in the morning, I will take 3 deep breaths. Just something as simple as that. And then an important step after that is celebrating. And that just means you're going to do something like, say, go me. You're just going to acknowledge that you've done it. And in that celebration, we set off again these positive neurochemicals that are then self motivating so that we want to do it again. So, all of those things can be helpful. Very high level. Our final pillar, vitality. These are our foundational vitality skills. And you've seen all of this before. You've seen them in different Wellspring programs. I've mentioned a few of them. So I'm not going to go into any detail on any others here. We know there are programs on exercise, on sleep, on nutrition, meditation, relaxation, all of those. But to know that they are all a part of our foundations of well-being and moving towards flourishing and thriving at any time. But I will ask you to think about on any one of these, what is working well for you right now? Which one have you engaged in, perhaps in an intentional way? And what is going well for you in that particular area? Maybe you've started to eat breakfast more regularly or are making some nourishing meals now, anything at all. And I love this quote because it really does matter that small decisions, just the smallest decisions that you make each day about how you eat, move, sleep, and everything else that we've talked about actually does matter, perhaps more than you think. And that brings us back to our PERMA-V model and just a reminder that these things don't work in isolation. They are all connected, that we can take any one of these paths and know that they will all be supportive of each of our well-being habits and each path, such that we can begin to move towards that flourishing part of the spectrum by taking any small deliberate action in any one. And with that, I will leave you with this. What is one first small step that you can take towards supporting your well-being and perhaps flourishing?